I was still wearing my hospital scrubs when I pushed through the heavy double doors of the city registry office. I had white surgical tape wrapped tightly around my right thumb. My hair was falling out of its messy knot, and I was still wearing disposable paper shoe covers over my clogs. I ran down the polished marble hallway, praying with every breath that I wasn't too late. But when I pushed open courtroom 3, my heart didn't just break, it stopped entirely. Standing at the altar in a floor-length ivory silk gown, holding a bouquet of fresh white roses, was my best friend, Vanessa. And standing right beside her, holding her hand, was my fiancé, Ethan. The judge was just closing his leather folder, and the signed marriage certificate was resting on the table. Before I could even process what was happening in front of me, Ethan's mother, Evelyn, stepped out from the front row. She walked straight up to me, looked me dead in the eyes, and smiled. That quiet, sharp smile she had been holding back for 3 years. She leaned in close and whispered, "You chose your operating room over my son, Nora. You're too late, darling. He's married now. Get out." My name is Dr. Nora Vance. At 32 years old, I was a chief pediatric cardiothoracic surgeon at St. Jude's Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. My life was built on precision, discipline, and evidence. I spent 7 years in medical school and residency, taking on high debts, working 80-hour weeks, and learning how to keep a child's beating heart stable in my hands. My work wasn't just my career, it was the core of who I was. 3 years ago, I met Ethan Cole at a charity gala for the Hospital Foundation. He was tall, well-groomed, and worked as a commercial real estate broker. He seemed attentive, grounded, and genuinely proud of my achievements. He used to introduce me at dinner parties with real warmth in his voice, saying, "This is Nora, my brilliant surgeon." I dated men before who got insecure about my salary or my demanding hours, but Ethan seemed completely different. The only dark shadow in my life was his mother, Evelyn. Evelyn was a retired high school principal who had spent 30 years convincing herself that no woman on earth would ever be good enough for her only son. From day one, she made her disdain for my profession painfully clear. The very first time I had dinner at her house, she looked at my hands across the dining table and said, "A woman who spends 60 hours a week holding surgical instruments will never know how to build a warm, proper home." I laughed back then, thinking it was an old-fashioned joke. She was not joking. In contrast, Evelyn absolutely adored my best friend, Vanessa Park. Vanessa and I had been roommates since our sophomore year of college. She worked as a senior marketing director for a tech firm downtown. She was effortlessly charming, beautiful, and possessed a talent for making everyone feel like the most important person in the room. When my father passed away during my residency, Vanessa was the one who brought me coffee and sat with me on the floor of my apartment. I trusted her with my life. She met Ethan through me, of course. The three of us spent dozens of weekends together. Dinners, holiday parties, weekend trips to the lake. Looking back now, I missed the subtle cues. The way Vanessa would touch Ethan's shoulder when she laughed at his jokes. The way Ethan would text her privately to check in on Nora during her long night shifts. And once, 3 months ago, I came home from a 19-hour shift smelling like antiseptic, too tired to even take off my shoes at the door. The apartment was dark except for the kitchen light. I heard Ethan's voice low before I saw him. "No, listen to me," he was saying into the phone, his back turned to the hallway. "If the credit line goes through this week, she won't notice a thing until after October. I need you to sign your half by Friday." I stood frozen in the doorway, one shoe still on. Ethan? Who was that? He spun around, and for exactly 1 second, something flickered across his face that I had never seen before. Not guilt exactly. Calculation. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual easy smile. "Client," he said, sliding the phone into his pocket. "Commercial lease restructuring. Boring stuff. You look exhausted, babe. Sit down, I'll make you tea." I sat down. I let him make the tea. I didn't ask why a client needed to sign her half of anything. I told myself surgeons don't get to be paranoid about every overheard sentence. We deal in facts, not suspicion. I was wrong. That night, I mistook exhaustion for trust. Ethan proposed 6 months ago in our living room. It was simple and quiet, just the two of us. We decided on a small, elegant civil ceremony at the county courthouse for October 12th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, followed by a private dinner with close family. It was exactly what I wanted. Vanessa was my maid of honor. She helped me pick out my wedding dress, organized my bachelorette dinner at a local wine bar, and sat through 3 separate tailoring appointments with me. She was present. She was supportive. She was my person. 2 weeks before the wedding, I was going through our joint account on my phone during a rare quiet moment in the surgeon's lounge, checking that the caterer's deposit had cleared. Instead, I found a transfer I didn't recognize. $10,000. Moved out 3 days earlier, memo line blank. That night at dinner, I slid my phone across the table to him. "What's this transfer, Ethan?" He glanced at it for less than a second before setting down his fork. His jaw tightened. "Nora, you make great money at the hospital, but you don't understand commercial investments. I needed liquidity for a venture. It's temporary. You didn't ask me. It's a joint account. I didn't think I needed to file a report every time I move money in my own business." His voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. Then, softer, almost wounded. "Do you trust me or not? Because if you don't, maybe we should talk about that instead of the wedding." I felt something twist in my stomach. Not suspicion exactly, more like the flat, cold instinct I got in the OR right before a routine procedure turned complicated. I ignored it. I told myself I was too tired, too close to the wedding, too in love to start a fight over $10,000. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand instead. It was the most expensive mistake of my life. On the morning of October 12th, at 6:15 in the morning, my phone rang. It was the hospital trauma coordinator. A 7-year-old boy named Toby had been rushed into emergency with severe chest trauma following a car accident. His vital signs were dropping rapidly. If I didn't operate immediately, he wouldn't make it through the afternoon. I called Ethan from the hospital scrub room while changing into my surgical gear. My hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. "Ethan," I said, "I have a critical pediatric emergency. A 7-year-old boy is on the table. The surgery will take at least 4 hours, but I will be done by noon. The ceremony is at 2. I will be there on time. Please wait for me." There was a pause on the line, a quiet, heavy pause that lasted 3 seconds too long. Then Ethan's voice came through. "Okay, Nora, just make sure you aren't late." The surgery was intense. Midway through repairing the tissue, Toby's blood pressure collapsed. We discovered a secondary internal issue that hadn't shown up on the initial CT scans. My attending anesthesiologist called a critical complication, and we had to pause, stabilize him, and carefully reconstruct the arterial wall. I lost all track of time. My entire existence shrunk down to the tiny beating heart under my gloved fingers. By the time I placed the final suture and handed Toby off to the pediatric ICU team, the clock on the operating room wall read 1:15 in the afternoon. I panicked. I stripped off my surgical gloves, pulled my phone from my locker, and saw 3 missed calls from a local downtown office number I didn't recognize, alongside 2 missed calls from Ethan. I didn't have time to check the unknown caller. I called Ethan twice, but it went straight to his voicemail. I sent a frantic text message. "Surgery ran long. Patient is stable. I am sprinting to my car now. Please wait for me. I love you." I drove through city traffic like a woman possessed, both hands locked on the wheel, my surgical scrub top damp with sweat. Every red light felt like a physical assault. I caught my own reflection in the rearview mirror, dark circles under my eyes, hair coming loose, still wearing paper shoe covers because I hadn't had 10 seconds to peel them off. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I glanced down, expecting Ethan. It was that same unknown downtown number again, calling for the 3rd time in 20 minutes. I almost answered. My thumb hovered over the screen at a red light. Then the light turned green, a car behind me honked, and I threw the phone back down and floored the gas instead. Whatever it was, it could wait. Nothing mattered except getting through those doors before 2 o'clock. I ran 2 yellow lights that were closer to red than I'd like to admit. I parked in an emergency loading zone outside the courthouse, threw the car into park without bothering to straighten the wheels, and ran. That was when my mother, standing in the hallway with tears in her eyes, broke the truth to me. Ethan's mother, Evelyn, had convinced Ethan to move the ceremony up by 45 minutes, claiming the judge had an urgent appointment. The ceremony had started at 1:15, the exact moment I was finishing the operation. And Vanessa had walked down that aisle in my place. I stood in the center of that marble corridor, breathless under the fluorescent lights. My mother was holding my arm, my Aunt Patricia was wiping her eyes with a tissue, and Evelyn was standing over me with that victorious smirk. "You proved what matters most to you, Nora," Evelyn said, her voice dripping with artificial pity. "You chose a stranger's child over your own husband. Vanessa understands what it means to put a man first." My knees felt hollow. The humiliation was a physical weight pressing down on my chest. I turned toward the exit doors, unable to look at Ethan, who was standing near the altar in his charcoal suit, avoiding my eyes. I wanted to disappear. I pushed open the heavy outer glass doors to leave, but a tall man in a dark trench coat stepped directly into my path, holding a thick leather folder. A silver badge was clipped to his belt. "Dr. Nora Vance?" His voice was calm and direct. I wiped my face, trying to gather my composure. "Yes, that's me." "I'm Detective Marcus Reed from the State Financial Crimes Division," he said, pulling a card from his pocket. "I've been trying to call your cell phone for the last hour, and I left 2 messages at your hospital desk." The pieces instantly clicked in my mind. That unknown downtown number on my phone during my drive over was him. Evelyn immediately marched up behind me, her voice sharp. "This is a private family event. My son just got married. Leave us alone." Detective Reed didn't even glance at her. "Ma'am, step back." He turned back to me. "Dr. Vance, we are executing a formal investigation into a corporate entity called Cole and Park Realty. Are you aware that your legal signature and social security number were used as the primary financial guarantor for a $200,000 line of credit?" The room seemed to tilt. 8 months ago, on a Saturday morning after I'd finished a grueling 36-hour weekend shift, Ethan had handed me a thick stack of bank documents at our kitchen island. He told me it was routine refinancing paperwork for our condo. I was so exhausted, I could barely keep my eyes open. I trusted the man I was going to marry. I signed where he pointed without reading the fine print. Over $120,000 was moved through that account in the last 6 months, Detective Reed said, opening his folder. The funds were used to lease a luxury office space downtown and purchase commercial equipment for a firm co-owned by Ethan Cole and Vanessa Park. 3 weeks ago, the account defaulted. Because your name is listed as the primary guarantor, the creditors filed a formal fraud complaint. I gripped the cold marble wall behind me. Every extra weekend shift I had taken, every holiday I worked while Ethan claimed he was working late, he hadn't just cheated on me with my best friend. He had used my name, my reputation, and my credit to finance their secret business behind my back. The overheard phone call 3 months ago wasn't about a client. It was about locking me into their debt before the wedding. "Dr. Vance?" Detective Reed asked. "Did you authorize these transfers, or were you an unwitting party?" I took a slow, deep breath. The heat in my chest turned into something cold and sharp. I looked at the surgical tape on my thumb, then pulled off my paper shoe covers one by one and dropped them into the trash bin. "I was an unwitting victim, Detective," I said clearly. "My signature was obtained through deception." "That confirms our records," Detective Reed nodded. "I have formal civil fraud subpoenas to execute today on both Mr. Cole and Miss Park. I can handle this privately, or I can step inside." I looked back at the double doors of courtroom 3. "Step inside with me, Detective." We walked back through the double doors together. The courtroom fell instantly silent. Ethan was standing by the altar holding Vanessa's hand, looking completely relieved that I had seemingly walked away. But when he saw me return alongside a detective carrying a badge and an official legal folder, his posture collapsed. Vanessa's smirk vanished instantly. Her eyes darted from my face to the detective's badge, and her grip on Ethan's hand tightened in panic. Ethan pulled his hand away from hers. Detective Reed stepped up to the wooden railing, his voice calm, professional, and unhurried. Ethan Allen Cole and Vanessa Marie Park. I am Detective Marcus Reed with the Financial Crimes Division. I am serving you both with formal court subpoenas in connection with an ongoing investigation into grand larceny, bank fraud, and identity misrepresentation regarding Cole and Park Realty. He stepped forward and placed the first white document envelope directly into Ethan's hands. Ethan's fingers trembled as he held the paper. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no words came out. Detective Reed then turned toward Vanessa, who was standing frozen in my stolen ivory wedding dress. He handed her the second envelope. Vanessa was shaking so uncontrollably that the paper slipped from her fingers and fell directly onto the carpet. She had to awkwardly bend down in her wedding gown to retrieve it, her face turning bright red as tears ruined her makeup. My Aunt Patricia stood up in the back row and said, "Loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear." Well, I'll be damned. Ethan took 2 steps toward me, his voice cracking. "Nora, please let me explain. Please. We were going to pay the account back before you ever noticed." I looked at Ethan, the man who had moved our wedding time up so I would fail to arrive. The man who had traded 10 years of my loyalty for a fraud scheme with my best friend. Then I looked at Vanessa, clutching my bouquet of white roses while holding a fraud subpoena in her shaking hands. "I hope she was worth $120,000 in a felony record, Ethan," I said, my voice quiet, clear, and steady. I didn't wait for his reply. I turned around, took my mother's arm, and walked out of the courtroom. The heavy double doors swung shut behind us, leaving Ethan, Vanessa, and Evelyn standing in the ruins of their own trap. The financial investigation took 7 long months to fully resolve, but I didn't face it alone. I hired a sharp, uncompromising financial attorney named Sandra Greer. Together with Detective Reed's unit, we proved that my signature on the joint liability documents had been obtained under false pretenses while I was legally fatigued following hospital shifts. By the end of the civil proceedings, I successfully cleared my name from the debt and recovered $61,000 of the funds Ethan had illegally funneled out of our household account. Without my credit backing them, Cole and Park Realty went completely bankrupt within 90 days. The commercial investors they had lied to filed 2 separate lawsuits against them. Facing severe financial strain and the humiliation of public court records, Ethan and Vanessa's marriage collapsed into a bitter, venomous divorce just 5 months after their courthouse ceremony. Evelyn, the woman who had spent years boasting about her son's perfection, was forced to sell her car and use her savings to pay for Ethan's defense lawyers. She never spoke to me again, and for that I was profoundly grateful. As for little Toby, the 7-year-old boy whose heart I stayed to repair on that cold October morning, he walked out of St. Jude's Hospital 11 days after his surgery, holding his mother's hand and wearing a purple dinosaur sweatshirt. His parents sent a handwritten card to my office every single year on October 12th that read simply, "Thank you for staying." I moved out of our shared condo and bought a sunlit 2-bedroom apartment in German Village. I adopted a 3-year-old beagle named Biscuit, decorated my home exactly the way I wanted, and continued walking into the operating room every morning at 6:45. People often ask me if I regret choosing the hospital over my wedding ceremony that day. My answer is always the same. I didn't lose a marriage on October 12th. I saved a child's life, and in doing so, I was saved from giving my life to a coward. Sometimes real strength isn't about holding on to a promise that was built on lies. Sometimes real strength is having the courage to pull off your paper shoe covers, look the truth in the eye, and walk away toward the life you were actually meant to build. If this story reminded you that doing the right thing always brings the truth to light, drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're listening from tonight. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss our next story.